So after understanding the cost estimation and budgeting part from the module number 2 and 3, in today's session, we'll be trying to move further and we are going to discuss upon two different points which are mentioned in the syllabus for module number 2 and 3. Among them, the point number 1 is related to the Gantt chart, which is used for scheduling of your project. And secondly, we have to take into account the important knowledge area for any project management, that is project risk management. So in today's session, we are going to discuss upon these two aspects, Gantt chart and project risk management. So let us go to the Gantt chart first. So before we move to the discussion on Gantt chart, let us try to understand the Gantt chart using this diagram. I hope the diagram is clear and visible to you. Is it okay? So in this diagram, if you try to understand the various columns and the rows which are given, then what you observe is column number 1. It is representing the variety of activities which are related to any particular project, and there are few more columns. At the top of them, the title is given as date, and those all columns, they are containing certain black lines in the form of bar chart or in the form of bars, which are having different lengths. The point at which they are starting and the point at which they are finishing, they are also different. So this is the general overview or general representation of any Gantt chart. So whenever we talk about preparing a Gantt chart for any particular project, the first thing what you should have with you is you should have your work breakdown structure. Because unless and until you have the work breakdown structure ready with you, it will be very difficult to prepare the Gantt chart. Because for Gantt chart, you need the list of activities, and list of activities you can have them with you only when you have the work breakdown structure ready for your particular project. So once your work breakdown structure is ready, whatever activities you have listed, you have mentioned in the work breakdown structure, you can go on listing all these activities in the first column, that is activity description. And after that, you have to go, either you can mention the dates, or you can mention the months, or you can mention the weeks. So whatever is a suitable format, according to that, you can go on representing the number of periods at the top of the heads for different columns which are in front of that. So let us say, if I assume that for this particular project, the dates are mentioned like at the every column start, let us say the date is 1, then column number 1 ends at 7, then 14, then 21, 28, something like this. Means in that case, what we can understand is each column, it will be representing 1 week. The starting point of your column is, let us say 1, and end point of your column is 7. Second column starts at 7, ends at 14. Means we can understand that these are nothing but the weeks for any particular month. So if these are the different weeks, and activity 1, we can observe that it is starting in the first column, at the beginning of first column, and it is finishing at the end of your first column. So we can predict that the activity 1 is starting at date 1 and it is finishing at date 7, means entire 1 week, the first week, it will be occupied by the various works related to activity 1. Similarly, if I go to activity 2, we are observing that activity 2 also, the bar chart or the line which is drawn, it is right from the beginning. So at date number 1 it starts, it is not stopping at 7, it is exceeding, it is going beyond that 7 in the next week, and it is going up to the end of that particular week, so up to 14. So we can assume that right from day 1 up to the date which is 14, means entire 2 weeks they will be consumed by your activity 2, and this activity 2 will be running parallel in the first week with activity 1, because activity 1, it is not continuing in the second week. Activity 1 gets finished by the end of week number 1, but activity 2 in week number 1, first week, it is running parallel to activity 1, and then also it is continuing towards the week number 2 till its end. Then if I see the activity 3, it starts at the beginning of week 2 at date 7, and then passing on to the 14, it is reaching up to 21. That is, it is also requiring 2 weeks period for completion of activity 3. But these 2 weeks, they are not starting from the beginning of your project. When they are starting from week 2. So week 2 and week 3, they are occupied by your works related to activity 3. So now what we understand is, in second week, at the beginning of your second week, your activity 1 is completely over, and during this second week, activity 2 and 3, they are running parallel to each other. At the end of 2 weeks, activity 1, activity 2 both have finished, activity 3, it is in progress. Likewise, you can go on understanding when each activity is starting, when it is finishing, at any particular point of time, which activities have finished, which activities are yet to start, and which activities they are under process, they are in process. For any particular period of time, you can understand which activities they are running parallelly and which activities they are dependent on each other. Like if I say activity 4, it starts at the beginning of week number 3. So maybe it will be requiring some inputs from activity 2. That's why once activity 2 is finished, then we have started with activity 4. Maybe activity 4 will be having dependence on activity 2. Similarly, activity 3 may have certain dependence on activity 1. That's why we cannot start activity 3 in first week, because activity 1 is not completed yet. Once it gets completed, then we can only start with activity 3. So this is understanding the information from given bar chart or given Gantt chart. If you want to prepare your own Gantt chart, then you have to list down all the activities. You can go on marking the dates or the weeks over which that activity is going to be executed. So what is the starting point? What is the finishing point? Which are running parallel, which are dependent. So these all things should be considered when you are drawing this particular bar chart. It is not always necessary that you should start from the starting point of any time period and finish only at the ending point of your time period. So you can see activity 5, it is starting at the beginning of week number 5 and it is finishing at the halfway, midway of week number 6. So maybe it will be requiring 1 week and some 3 to 4 days. So 1.5 weeks. That is the only work related to activity number 5. Similarly, activity number 6, it starts at the point activity 5 finishes, midway in the week number 6, and it is completed by the end of your week number 7. So likewise, whatever diagrammatic representation you prepare for schedule of your project, this diagrammatic representation we normally call it as a Gantt chart, and this is a very useful, simplest kind of tool to represent the schedule of your project, the dependencies of the various activities, and to give the information about the various activities and at any particular point of time regarding which have been completed, which are yet to yet to start, and which are in process. So that overall data we can get from this particular Gantt chart. So this Gantt chart, it was developed around in the year 1917 by Henry Gantt, who is called as a pioneer in the field of scientific management. And this particular Gantt chart is one of the most useful method of presenting the project schedule information. This Gantt chart shows planned and actual progress of number of tasks displayed as bars against a horizontal time scale. It is particularly effective and easy to read method of indicating actual current status for each of a set of tasks compared to the planned progress for each item of the set. So once you have this Gantt chart prepared, so you can have two different things that can be shown on this Gantt chart. One is the planned duration and second is the actual duration. Sometimes your activity may get finished exactly as per the plan. So in that case, your actual bar chart will overlap the planned bar chart, planned Gantt chart. If you have completed the activity with less duration as compared to the plan, you can show it by different color that the activity has completed within 80% of the time or 70% of the time which was planned. And sometimes you may have excess time required for completion of any activity. Then your actual chart, actual bar chart will exceed the time which is mentioned in the planned bar chart. So either you can have two different charts, one planned and one for actual, or you can overlap them. You can have the combination of planned and execution kind of Gantt chart where both planning and execution will be shown on, which is in the form of overlapping of this particular chart. So particularly these Gantt charts are used in the factories, in the offices, so that if the Gantt chart is displayed at a prominent place in your organization, everyone who is working on that particular project, whenever he is working, whenever he is doing his own work, doing the tasks which are assigned, parallelly he will have one eye always on the various activities which are mentioned in the Gantt chart, so that he will come to know whether we are ahead of the time or we are moving with the time. So likewise, this will be giving a true picture of the progress of your project, and that is very essential for any project, that everybody should understand what is the current state of your project. As a result, the Gantt chart can be helpful in expediting, sequencing and reallocating resource among tasks, as well as in the valuable but routine job of keeping track of how things are going. In addition, the charts usually contain a number of special symbols to designate or highlight items of special concern to the situation being charted. There are several advantages to the use of Gantt chart. They may contain great deal of information, but they are easily understood. Gantt charts provide a picture of the current state of a project. So this is what we have discussed, that any point of time, the current state of your project activities, that will be easily depicted. Gantt chart have a serious weakness, that if a project is complex with a large set of activities, It may be very difficult to follow multiple activity paths through the project. Gantt charts are powerful devices for communicating to senior management, but networks are usually more useful in hands-on task of managing the project. So when you have your project, which is slightly simple, don't have much complexity, limited number of activities you are having, then you can have the Gantt chart in place and you can monitor the progress of your project. But when there are number of activities, the project is having complexity, then instead of Gantt chart, people prefer to go for networks and try to have the monitoring of your project through the network analysis. The next part what we are going to understand is related to project risk management. When we say about the project risk management, this particular knowledge area is one of the very important knowledge areas of project management body of knowledge. Whatever 10 knowledge areas they have been defined by PMI in project management body of knowledge, that is PMBOK, out of those 10 knowledge areas, this particular project risk management is one of the most crucial, one of the most important knowledge area, because if the risk management is done extremely carefully, if the risk management is done very carefully, then this will be ensuring that your project may have greater chances of being successful. So for project to be successful, the project risk management is one of the essential knowledge area which must be emphasized at a very with some extreme care. So project risk management includes the processes and conducting risk management planning, identification, analysis, response planning, and controlling risk on a project. So there are various activities. Whenever we are talking about the project risk management, it is not like directly we can go for deciding how we can go for planning a project risk management process to get executed. We have to go for planning the project risk management process. We should go for identification of the risk categories. We have to analyze them, we have to prioritize them, we have to rank them based upon their importance. We should go for understanding how the responses to these particular risk categories, they should be planned, how they should be responded, and finally how the risk they can be controlled for a specific project. So these all things, they are considered when we take the terminology that is project risk management. The objective of this project risk management is to increase the likelihood and impact of positive events and decrease the likelihood and impact of negative events in the project. So there are two types of risks. Whenever we say risks, they are nothing but in the form of certain uncertain events, and these uncertain events, they are either having positive effect or they are having certain negative effect. So obviously, when the events, whatever they are occurring, they have negative effect, then the project team will desire that those particular negative events, their likelihood and impact, it should be decreased. And if the events are carrying certain positive effect, then the likelihood and impact of those events, it should be increased. So the objective of project risk management is nothing but what? If the risks are positive, more and more likelihood and impact, it should be assured. And if the risks are negative, then the likelihood and impact of those risks, it should be minimized. It should be removed so that the project will be free of risk and it will move towards success for the final goals and objectives. Project risk is an uncertain event or condition that, if it occurs, has a positive or negative effect on one or more project objectives such as scope, schedule, cost, and quality. So as we know, for any project, there are certain basic objectives like scope of your project, schedule of your project, cost of the project, and quality of your project. So these are the fundamental objectives with which any project is running, and whatever uncertain events they are occurring which are having the positive or negative effects on these project objectives, so those uncertain events we will be calling them as they are nothing but the project risks. A risk may have one or more causes, and if it occurs, it may have one or more impacts. So any particular risk, it may not be appearing, it may not be coming into picture only because of any single reason. There may be multiple causes because of whom that risk is appearing, and at the same time, whatever risk it has occurred, it will not have impact only on a single objective of your project, or it may not have impact only on a particular portion of your project. There may be multiple aspects, multiple impacts of that particular risk on your project. A cause may be a given or potential requirement, assumption, constraint, or condition that creates the possibility of negative or positive outcomes. The risk is that condition that creates the possibility of the risk is that permitting agency may take longer than planned to issue a permit, or in the case of an opportunity, additional development personnel may become available who can participate in design and they can assign to the project. So if it is a negative risk, then we should try for minimizing its effect and likelihood, and if it is a positive risk, then we should make some additional development person who will be available to participate in design and they can be assigned to the project. If either of these uncertain event occurs, there may be an impact on the project scope, cost, schedule, quality, and performance. Risk conditions may include aspects of the project or organization's environment that contribute to project risk, such as immature project management practices, lack of integrated management system, concurrent multiple projects, or dependency on external participants who are outside the project's direct control. So some conditions which may give rise to risk categories will be like your project management practices. They may be immature. There is no proper maturity, no proper weightage assigned to various activities in your project management practices. The integration management, as we have the first knowledge area, project integration management, that may be having certain lacuna, certain failures. We may have multiple projects which are going on simultaneously, concurrently, so they may be affecting each other, and dependency on external participants. So some projects may have key persons which are from outside the project organization and on whom you don't have any control. So in those particular cases, dependency on those external participants who are outside the project's direct control, then there are chances of having the occurrence of risk categories in your project. There are several processes which are included in the project risk management. The number of processes, they are planning the risk management, identification of the risk, performing the qualitative risk analysis, and performing the quantitative risk analysis. Then planning the risk responses, and finally controlling the risk. So first process is we have to chalk out a clear-cut plan how the risk management process will be implemented in your project. So how the different activities for risk management they will be executed, that should be planned properly. Secondly, what we have to do is we have to identify what are the various possible risks positive and negative, they are supposed to affect your project, or they are supposed to occur in the life cycle of your project. When we are listing down this risk, we should also go for documenting what are their characteristics, how they are going to affect the project objectives, in what domain they will be affecting the project objective, what type of effect those risks they can make on your project. So description, the characteristics, everything about the risk category which has been identified, that we should have documented properly. Then when we consider the risk analysis in two different methods, qualitative and quantitative, when we go for qualitative risk analysis, we go for ranking the risk, we go for prioritizing the risk based upon the probability of occurrence and the impact. Now, how the probability of occurrence and impact is decided before the risk is actually appearing, it is based upon the data which is available for previous projects, the judgments of your senior management, the opinions of your experts in your project, and the experiences of those higher level authorities, that will be deciding what will be the probability of occurrence and impact for those particular risks. And using these probability of occurrence and impact, qualitatively we can have the prioritization of your risk categories. Then when it comes to quantitative risk analysis, we are assigning some numerical values to the particular risk categories, and we are trying to evaluate the importance of your risk categories based upon these numbers which have been assigned, or the weights which have been assigned to the risk categories. The next is about, we should plan certain responses to each risk category which have been identified. So whenever we are going for planning the risk categories, we should try to understand the characteristics of the risk first, and then we should try to plan the responses to these risk categories based upon their characteristics. And the last step is about the control of risk. This is the process of implementing risk response plans, tracking the identified risk, monitoring the residual risk, identifying the new risk, and evaluating risk process effectiveness throughout the project. So last step is also very important. You have prepared the project risk management plan at the beginning, then you are going for identification, analysis, responding the risk, etc., etc. There must be some tracking, there must be some monitoring, and if required, there must be some controlling action if the planned and actual, they are deviating from each other. So that is nothing but the control risk, that last step. Then coming to the next part, it is about the risk attitudes. Organizations, they perceive risk as the effect of uncertainty on project and organizational objectives. Organizations and stakeholders are willing to accept varying degrees of risk depending upon their risk attitude. So when the organizations or stakeholders, they decide to accept, reject any risk category, it is based upon their risk attitude. The risk attitudes of both the organization and stakeholders may be influenced by number of factors, which are like risk appetite, risk tolerance, and risk threshold. So taking into consideration the first one, that is risk appetite, this is the degree of uncertainty an entity is willing to take on in anticipation of a reward. So how much the people will be willing to undertake any risk in anticipation of any reward. So that is nothing but the risk appetite. Second is about the tolerance, that is your upper limit, the degree, amount, or volume of risk that organization or individual will withstand. So there may be certain level which is predicted as that is the upper limit of tolerance to the risk category, then that will be considered as risk tolerance. And third is about the risk threshold. This refers to measures along the level of uncertainty or level of impact at which stakeholder may have a specific interest. Below that risk threshold, the organization will accept the risk. So there may be particular value of risk impact or risk occurrence possibility, below which if it is there, the user or the customer will be ready to accept the risk. But if it is going beyond that, then the risk will become a threat, and that's why we should have this risk threshold, which will be specifying that these are the limiting borders for accepting the risk. Then coming to the various activities of project risk management, the first one is planned risk management. In this particular process, we are defining how to conduct the risk management activities for any project. The key benefit of this process is it is ensuring that the degree, type and visibility of risk management, they are commensurate with both the risk and importance of the project to the organization. So when you are going for this planned risk management process, we have to ensure that whatever degree, type and visibility of risk management we are planning, it should be in line with the importance of project to your organization. The risk management plan is vital to communicate with and obtain agreement and support from all the stakeholders to ensure the risk management process is supported and performed effectively over the project life cycle. So this plan will be always serving as a reference document, so that always the actual execution of risk management will be compared with this risk management plan. This risk management plan, why we are referring? Because it will be having the approval agreement from the stakeholder, the support from the stakeholder, and if the risk management plan is performed effectively, then the project success will be almost assured. There are certain inputs, tools and techniques and outputs for this particular process of planning the risk management. So the inputs what we require for planning risk management are: we should have the project management plan with us, we should have the project charter document, we should have stakeholder register, we must have this enterprise environmental factors into consideration, and we should also take into account the organizational process assets. So out of these 5, enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets, these are almost common inputs to any of the project management processes. The project management plan must be available because your risk management must be in line with whatever has been project management plan. Project charter, to understand who is the project manager, what is the scope of your project, what is the title of the project, and overall information about the project. And stakeholder register, because we want to take the approval and support from all the stakeholders. So before that, we should have the stakeholder register with their contact details, so that stakeholders can be communicated. Then regarding the tools and techniques, there are certain tools and techniques which can be applied. They are like, we can use some analytical techniques, we can have judgment from certain experts, and then we can call some meetings with the stakeholders, with the project team, with other experts, and get their feedbacks based on whatever inputs we have received. The final output of this entire process will be nothing but preparation of the risk management plan. So by the end of this process, your risk management plan will be completely ready. Second step is about the risk identification. So in this particular process, determining which risk may affect the project and documenting their characteristics, so that is more involved. Key benefits of this process is the documentation of existing risk, and the knowledge and ability it provides to the project team to anticipate the events. So certain risks which are assured, they can also be documented. At the same time, certain risks which are probable, which have been identified, they may affect your project, they may not affect your project, but at least the team will be ready, the team will be prepared to anticipate the effect of those particular risks. Participants in risk identification activity may involve project manager, project team member, project management team, customers, subject matter experts from outside the project team, end user, other project managers, stakeholders, and risk management experts. Activity. So right from the project manager to the entire project team to the customers of your project to the stakeholders and risk management experts, all other, they will be involved in this risk identification activity. Identify risk is an iterative process because new risk may evolve or become known as project progresses through the life cycle. So identification of risk is not a one-time process. This process must be carried out at regular intervals because as and when your project is progressing, some new risks they will be appearing, new risks they will be coming into picture, and they should be taken into consideration as and when the project is progressing. The frequency of iteration and participation in each cycle will vary by situation. So that may be decided by the project manager, that what should be the frequency of iteration for taking into consideration this identification of the risk process. It is not that every day we should go for risk identification. So there must be some regular intervals decided, and during that interval there will be identification of the risk categories. The format of risk statement should be consistent to ensure that each risk is understood clearly and unambiguously in order to support effective analysis and response development. The risk statement should support the ability to compare relative effect of one risk against others on the project. So whenever we are defining this risk or identifying the risk, we should also try to understand the dependency of the risk categories on each other, the interrelationship of the risk categories on each other, how much they are affecting the other risk categories. The process should involve the project team so that they can develop and maintain a sense of ownership and responsibility for the risk and associated risk response actions. So these risks, they should not be identified only by the top management or some consultants or certain high level management people, but the project team, they should be involved directly with the identification of the risk, and also they should be encouraged to propose their proposed risk responses to the risks identified, so that they will feel a sense of ownership, they will have a sense of ownership, they will find themselves responsible for the risk which is identified, and that will be more beneficial for that entire project. Stakeholders outside the project team may provide additional objective information. So some stakeholders which are not included in the project team, but they are part of your project, they have a certain interest in your project, they, if they are involved in this identification process, they can give certain inputs which may be outside the whatever discussion is going on within the project team. So once you have this identification of risk process completed, you can prepare a register which is called as risk register. In this risk register, basically what we have to do is we have to go on listing down the various risk categories or risk which have been identified. We should also go for giving their descriptions and the characteristics of the risk, and also we should document what are the potential responses. So whenever we are going for this, it should be that potential responses, they can be prepared, they can be documented by discussion with other stakeholders, by discussion with other members involved in risk identification process. But the output of this risk identification process is preparation of or updation of your risk register, because this risk identification process is to be conducted at regular intervals, and at every interval the register will get updated with some new categories of risks. The next part is about the qualitative risk assessment. When we say qualitative, we are not assigning any values, assigning any numbers. We are simply trying to prioritize the risk, rank the risk based upon the judgment, the experiences, certain data available for the risk categories which are available with us. The key benefit of this process is it enables project manager to reduce the level of uncertainty and to focus on high priority risk. So once you have this exercise conducted of prioritizing the risk, then it will be better for your project manager to focus on high priority risk as compared to the risks which are having lower priority. The inputs, tools and techniques and outputs of this process, they are as depicted in the figure. So again, input, tools and techniques and outputs, normally in project management domain or in project management terminology, we say this is ITTO, ITTO. I is input, double T is tools and techniques, and O is output. So ITTO for qualitative risk assessment, inputs are, you should have risk management plan, you should have the scope baseline with you, and you should have the risk register ready. Then enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets, they are common inputs for almost all the processes. Then the tools and techniques what we can use is, we can go for risk probability and impact assessment. This assessment can be done by using the probability and impact matrix. Then risk data quality assessment, risk categorization, risk urgency assessment, and expert judgment. Finally, once you complete with this qualitative risk assessment process, the project documents, they will get updated. So this will give updation to the project documents with respect to what prioritization you have made for the risk categories identified. So performing qualitative risk analysis, it assesses the priority of identified risk using relative probability or likelihood of occurrence and their corresponding impact on project objectives if the risk occurs. So basically, there is a tool which is called as probability and impact matrix, which is also called as PI matrix, probability P, impact I. So probability and impact matrix or PI matrix. In this particular case, we try to understand what is the probability of occurrence of any risk category and what is the impact of that risk on your project objectives like cost, schedule, scope, and quality. Now, when we say about the impact and when we say about the probability of occurrence, the overall effect of your risk category, it is calculated as product of probability and impact of your risk category. So if both are higher, probability is also high, impact is also high, the product will result in a huge amount, and that category will be considered as a high priority risk category. If any one of them is lower, it will try to reduce the overall value, and that can be among the moderate kind of risk category. And if both probability is also low and impact is also low, then the product will be very small. And if the product is very small, then those risks, they can be considered to be the low priority risk. So this is a sample probability versus impact matrix. So this is with reference to the Project Management Institute's PMBOK, a standard PI matrix which is given. So you can observe that in the first column there are probabilities 0.90, 0.70, 0.50, 0.30, 0.10. Means your probability of occurrence is 10%, 30%, 50%, 70%, 90% likewise. And if you refer to the various columns, then the table or the matrix has been divided into two parts. One is threats and other is opportunities, or in other risk terminology, threats are nothing but what? They are negative risk, and opportunities, they are nothing but the positive risk. Then if you refer to the last row, there are certain values given and mentioned as very low, low, moderate, high, very high. That is nothing but the impact of that risk on your project. So if you consider the first part, that is threats, the impact is going on increasing from left to right. From 0.05 very low, it is going up to 0.80, which is very high. Reversely, when you go for opportunities, it starts at 0.80 very high and slowly reaches to the last value, that is 0.05, which is very less. Now in this particular scenario, if you consider any particular value, like let us say if you consider this 0.72, how it has come? This 0.72 is nothing but, check the row and check the column. So 0.9 multiplied by 0.8, that is nothing but 0.72. If I say 0.36, it is 0.9 multiplied by 0.4, that is 0.36. So likewise, each cell what you are considering, check the column value, check the row value. Row value given in the first column and column value given in the last row. So take the product of these column and row and give your effect of risk on project objectives. Now we can see there are three different colors used. Let's focus only on the first part, that is threats, negative risk. So you can see 0.18, 0.36, 0.72, 0.56, 0.28, 0.20, 0.40, 0.24. These all are categorized with dark gray color. Then at the lower side you have light gray color, and in between it is almost no color. Why it is so? Because the dark gray color, it is indicating high priority risk. Middle, they are representing the moderate risk, and these light gray color cells, they are representing the situations where the risks, they are low priority. If you go for opportunities, the things are like mirror image. You will have high priority risk first, then moderate, and then low priority risk. This is another version for probability versus impact matrix. It is also called as likelihood versus consequences risk matrix. So again, instead of simply numbers, the likelihood or probability of occurrence, it is given as certain, means more than 90% chance of having that risk, likely, moderate, unlikely, and rare. So when we say rare, it is less than 3% chance to have that particular risk in your project. And then consequences, they have been given from left to right in the increasing order: insignificant consequences, minor effects, moderate effects, major effects, and catastrophic effects. So like we start with risk is easily mitigated by normal day-to-day operation. Up from that, the last point is project is abandoned, means project has been stopped. So the impact may be severe like this. Either it can be very small kind of impact where you can easily manage those risks, but the impact can be so severe that you need to abandon your project. You need to stop your project, terminate your project, because the risks, they are so tremendous that you cannot continue the project work. So again, in this case, there are three colors mentioned. The red color indicates they are high priority risk, yellow will be indicating moderate, and green is indicating they are lower priority risk category. So I hope that today's discussion regarding the Gantt chart and project risk management and the different stages in project risk management, that you have understood, and you will be able